I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the pot of coffee I just brewed, when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was Marissa, my wife, or at least she still was, legally speaking. The text popped up, and I swear it felt like someone dumped a bucket of ice water over my head. Hey, just a heads up. Mom's hosting a small thing for Eli's birthday Saturday. We kept it tight, just family. Hope you understand. I read it once, then twice, because my brain couldn't catch up with what my eyes were seeing. Just family? Eli's my son. My little boy, the one I'd rocked to sleep 100 times, the one whose diapers I'd changed in the middle of the night while Marissa snored away. His first birthday, and I'm not invited? My chest tightened, like someone had grabbed my heart and squeezed it hard. I blinked at the screen, trying to make sense of it, but all I could feel was the sharp sting, this betrayal cutting deeper with every second I stood there. I couldn't just let it sit there, festering like that. My hands were shaking, but I hit the call button anyway. Marissa picked up after 2 rings, her voice all light and airy, like she was talking about the weather. It's just a birthday, Cal. Don't make it a thing. Don't make it a thing? My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. This wasn't some random barbecue or a girl's night out. It was Eli's first birthday, a milestone I'd been picturing for months. I'd stayed up late imagining the cake, the goofy grin he'd have when we sang to him, the way I'd scoop him up and tell him he was the best thing I'd ever made. And now she was acting like it was nothing, like I was overreacting for wanting to be there. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it came out rough, raw. He's my son too, Marissa. How is this not a thing? She sighed, that little huff she does when she's annoyed, and said, look, it's Mom's thing. She wanted it small. You'll see him another day. Another day. Like I was some weekend visitor, not his dad. I hung up, my pulse hammering in my ears, and before I could stop myself, I dialed Doreen, Marissa's mom. She answered with that fake sweet tone she uses when she's about to shut you down. Callum, hi. What's this about? I didn't waste time. Why am I not invited to Eli's birthday? She didn't even pause, just launched right in. It's more of a maternal side of it, nothing personal. We're keeping it simple. Nothing personal? I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat like a jagged rock. Eli's my kid, and they're boxing me out like I'm some distant cousin who sends a card once a year. I wanted to yell, to tell her how wrong this was, but she kept going, her voice sharp now. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Callum. It's one day. One day. My son's first birthday. I hung up on her too, my hand shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. I walked into the living room, still reeling, and there it was a half-finished Lego tower Eli had been playing with the last time he was here. Those little blue and red bricks, scattered across the coffee table, hit me like a punch to the gut. I could still see his chubby hands stacking them, hear his giggle when they'd fall over. That was my boy, my life, and they were cutting me out of it. Something snapped inside me, this hot, angry thing that I couldn't push down anymore. Fine. If they didn't want me there, if I wasn't family enough for them, then I wouldn't be around at all. I grabbed my phone again, my thumb hovering over the screen, and I started looking for a way out. Not just out of the house, but out of this whole mess they'd made. They could have their maternal side of it. Without me, I'd be gone, and they'd see what it felt like to miss someone who mattered. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew I wasn't sticking around to beg for a seat at a table they didn't even set for me. My heart was still racing, but now it wasn't just hurt, it was purpose. I'd show them I didn't need their permission to live my life, to feel like I mattered. Eli might not remember this birthday, but I damn sure remember how they made me feel, and I wasn't going to let it happen again. I sat down on the couch, right next to that Lego tower, and started scrolling, looking for somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't here. They'd pushed me out, and I was done pushing back. It was time to walk away. The kitchen felt smaller now, like the walls were closing in, but I didn't care. I poured myself a coffee, the steam rising up as I leaned against the counter, my mind spinning. I wasn't just mad. I was done. Done with Marissa's breezy excuses, done with Doreen's smug little rules, done with feeling like I had to prove I belonged in my own son's life. I took a sip, the heat burning my tongue, and it felt good, like it was waking me up. I wasn't going to call again, wasn't going to argue. They'd made their choice, and now I was making mine. I'd find a place to go, somewhere far from their balloons and their cake and their just family nonsense. I didn't need their invitation. I'd make my own plans, my own peace. And maybe, just maybe, they'd realize what they'd lost when I wasn't there to pick up the pieces anymore. I set the mug down, harder than I meant to, and it clinked against the counter. My eyes drifted back to the phone, to that stupid text still glowing on the screen. Hope you understand. No, I didn't understand, and I wasn't going to pretend I did. I opened a browser, my fingers moving fast now, searching for flights, hotels, anything that'd take me away from this. I didn't know what I'd find, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't spending Saturday sitting here, staring at these walls, while they celebrated without me. They wanted a tight little party? They could have it. I'd be somewhere else, somewhere they couldn't reach me, and I'd make damn sure it was better than anything they could have planned. That Lego tower caught my eye again, and I felt a pang, but I shoved it down. This wasn't about Eli, this was about them, and I wasn't playing their game anymore. I couldn't sleep that night, not after the way everything had gone down in the kitchen earlier. The house was quiet, too quiet, and it gave my thoughts too much room to bounce around. I ended up on the couch, a beer in one hand and my phone in the other, scrolling through an old photo album I'd kept on there. Pictures of Eli popped up, tiny, wrinkled, fresh from the hospital, his little fist curled up while Marissa slept in the background. I'd taken those shots, bleary-eyed and grinning like an idiot, because I couldn't believe he was mine. There were others too, me reading him bedtime stories, his head tucked under my chin, or the two of us at the park, him laughing as I pushed him on the baby swings. Those moments were everything to me, the glue that kept me going through the late nights and the fights with Marissa. And now, his first birthday was coming, this big, bright milestone, and they were telling me I wasn't essential. Like I was some extra piece they could leave out of the puzzle. The beer tasted bitter, or maybe that was just me. I set it down and rubbed my face, trying to shake the weight pressing on my chest. I kept seeing the text from Marissa, those cold little words, just family, and Doreen's voice, smooth and sharp, calling it a maternal side of it. It wasn't just that they didn't invite me, it was that they didn't even think I'd care. Like all those nights I'd spent pacing the floor with Eli, all those mornings I'd made his bottles, didn't count for anything. I wasn't going to sit here and take it, though. I wasn't going to let them erase me from his life one small thing at a time. My hand was trembling, but I grabbed my phone again, this time with a purpose. I wasn't calling anyone, I was done talking. I opened a travel app instead, the screen lighting up my face in the dark living room. At first, I scrolled through beach resorts, picturing sand and sun and a drink with one of those little umbrellas. But that didn't feel right, too loud, too crowded. I needed something else, something that'd strip away all this noise in my head. Then I saw it, Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Snow, mountains, cabins tucked away where no one could find me. It hit me like a lightning bolt. This was it. I could see myself there, standing in the cold, breathing air that didn't smell like resentment. I tapped through the options fast, my heart pounding now, but not from anger anymore. A private cabin, a ski pass, a first-class flight out of here. It was all right there, waiting. I didn't care about the cost. I just wanted out. I booked it all in one go, my finger slamming the confirm button like it was a lifeline. The next morning, I woke up with a crick in my neck from the couch, but I didn't care. The sun was barely up, and I felt different, like I'd taken a step I couldn't take back. I grabbed my phone and called Jude, my boss, before I could second-guess myself. He picked up quick, his voice gravelly like he'd just rolled out of bed too. Cal, what's up? You okay? I didn't sugarcoat it. I need some time off, Jude. Starting tomorrow. I'm heading out of town. There was a pause, and I braced myself for questions, but he just chuckled, low and easy. You deserve some space, man. Take it. We'll manage without you for a bit. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Thanks, Jude. I owe you. He laughed again. No, you don't. Just don't freeze your ass off wherever you're going. I hung up, and for the first time in days, I felt lighter. The house didn't feel so small anymore. It felt like a launch pad. I got up, stretched, and walked to the kitchen to make coffee, my mind already racing with what I'd need to pack. Wyoming wasn't just a getaway, it was a statement. They could have their party, their balloons, their cake. I didn't need it. I'd be somewhere else, somewhere they couldn't touch me, and I'd make it better than anything they could throw together. I poured the coffee, the smell filling the room, and leaned against the counter, staring out the window. The backyard was still, just grass and a couple of trees, but in my head, I was already seeing snow-covered hills and pine trees stretching up to the sky. I took a sip, letting the heat sink in, and started planning. I'd need my heavy coat, some boots, maybe a hat, stuff I hadn't touched since last winter. I'd pack light, though. I didn't want anything weighing me down. This wasn't about running away, it was about taking control. They thought I'd just sit here, waiting for scraps of time with Eli, but they were wrong. I wasn't going to beg for a place in his life. I built something for myself instead. The coffee mug warmed my hands, and I felt a small, hard smile tug at my mouth. Jackson Hole wasn't just a trip. It was my way of saying I wasn't disposable. They could keep their tight, little party. I'd be gone, and they'd feel it. I set the mug down and headed to the bedroom, pulling my duffel bag out from under the bed. It was old, a little beat up, but it'd do. I tossed it on the mattress and started grabbing clothes, sweaters, socks, a pair of gloves I'd forgotten I owned. Every item I threw in felt like a brick in a wall I was building between me and them. I didn't know what I'd find out there in the snow, but I knew it'd be better than sitting here, staring at that half-finished Lego tower and feeling like I didn't matter. I zipped the bag shut, the sound loud in the quiet room, and stood there for a second, breathing hard. This was it. I was really doing it. And for once, I wasn't looking back. I stood in the bedroom, my duffel bag zipped up and sitting on the bed like a quiet promise. Packing it had been slow, deliberate. Every sweater I folded, every pair of socks I tucked in, felt like I was putting on armor. Not the kind that protects you from a fight, but the kind that keeps you standing when someone's already knocked you down. The house was still, just the hum of the fridge in the kitchen breaking the silence, and I liked it that way. It gave me space to think, to let the decision I'd made last night settle into my bones. I was leaving. Jackson Hole was waiting, and I wasn't going to let anything pull me back. Not guilt, not second thoughts, nothing. I grabbed the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and headed downstairs, my boots thumping on the steps. It felt good, that weight on my back. It was mine, something I'd chosen. My phone buzzed as I hit the bottom stair, and I almost ignored it. But I glanced at the screen, and there it was, a flood of messages lighting up like warning lights on a dashboard. Marissa's name popped up first. You sure you don't want to come? It's no big deal. I stared at it, my jaw tightening. No big deal. She was still acting like this was some casual thing, like I was overreacting for wanting to be at my own son's birthday. I scrolled down, and there was Doreen. Don't make this about you. That one hit like a slap, and I could hear her voice in my head, all prim and cutting. Then Kylie, Marissa's sister, chimed in. Hope you're not serious. Eli won't remember. I let out a sharp breath, almost a laugh, but there was no humor in it. They didn't get it. Not one of them. This wasn't about Eli remembering. This was about me, about what it meant to be his dad, and they were stripping that away like it was nothing. I dropped the bag by the front door and sank onto the couch, my phone still in my hand. Part of me wanted to fire back, to type out everything boiling inside me. How they gutted me with this. How they didn't have the right to decide where I belonged. But what was the point? They'd just twist it, make me the bad guy for feeling anything at all. Instead, I opened the camera roll, found the picture of my plane ticket I'd screenshotted last night. First class to Jackson Hole. Departure tomorrow, and stared at it. That was my answer, right there. Not words, not arguments, but action. I switched to my social media app, the one I barely used anymore, and posted the ticket with a caption. If I'm not invited, I'm unavailable. I hit send before I could overthink it, and the little notification sound felt like a door slamming shut. Good. Let them see it. Let them know I wasn't sitting here waiting for their permission. The phone buzzed again almost instantly. Likes, comments, a couple of shocked emojis from old friends I hadn't talked to in months. I didn't read them. I didn't need their opinions either. I tossed the phone onto the cushion next to me and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The half-finished Lego tower was still there on the coffee table, and it caught my eye again. I could almost hear Eli's laugh, that high-pitched squeal he'd let out when I'd knock it over on purpose just to see him smile. My chest ached, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about abandoning him. It was about refusing to let them treat me like I didn't matter. I'd see him soon, on my terms, not theirs. For now, I had to get out, had to breathe air that didn't taste like their rules. I got up, grabbed my coat from the closet, and checked the time. I still had a few things to do, pick up some thermal socks, maybe a new pair of gloves, stuff I'd need for the snow. The airport shuttle was booked for tomorrow morning, and I wanted to be ready. I stepped outside, locking the door behind me, and the cold air hit my face, sharp and clean. It wasn't Wyoming cold, not yet, but it was a taste of what was coming. I walked to my truck, the duffel still slung over my shoulder, and tossed it in the back. Driving into town, I kept the radio off, letting my thoughts run. I pictured Marissa reading that post, her lips pressing into that thin line she does when she's mad. I pictured Doreen scoffing, telling whoever would listen that I was being dramatic. Good. Let them talk. I wasn't there to hear it. At the store, I moved quick. Socks, gloves, a scarf I didn't really need but grabbed anyway. The cashier, a kid with a bored look, barely glanced at me as he rang it up. Big trip? He mumbled, nodding at the pile. Yeah, I said, keeping it short. Heading somewhere cold. He shrugged, like it didn't matter, and it didn't, not to him. But to me, it was everything. I paid, grabbed the bag, and headed back to the truck. The sky was gray now, clouds rolling in, and it matched how I felt, stormy, but steady. I drove home, the streets quiet, and pulled into the driveway just as my phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. Whatever they had to say, it could wait. I was done answering. Back inside, I dropped the shopping bag by the duffel and went to the kitchen. I made a sandwich, ham, cheese, nothing fancy, and ate it standing up, leaning against the counter. The house felt different now, like it was just a pit stop, not a home. I washed the plate, set it to dry, and glanced at the clock. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. I grabbed my phone one last time, saw the notifications piling up, more messages, more reactions, but I powered it off. Silence. That's what I wanted, what I was chasing. I headed upstairs, lay on the bed without bothering to change, and closed my eyes. The duffel was packed, the ticket was posted, and I was gone, maybe not yet, but in every way that mattered. They'd see it soon enough. I stepped off the plane in Jackson Hole, and the cold hit me like a wall, sharp, crisp, and so different from the stale air I'd left behind. It rushed into my lungs, stinging a little, and I stood there on the tarmac for a second, just breathing it in. The mountains loomed in the distance, jagged and white, like something out of a painting I couldn't have dreamed up. I'd made it. My duffel bag hung heavy on my shoulder, but I didn't mind. I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The resentment, the hurt, all that mess with Marissa and Doreen, it was still there, sure, but it was quieter now, muffled by the wind whipping across the runway. I adjusted my coat and headed toward the lodge shuttle, my boots crunching on the thin layer of snow already dusting the ground. The shuttle driver, a guy named Wes, gave me a nod as I climbed in. He was older, maybe 50, with a scruffy beard and a voice that sounded like he'd smoked one too many cigarettes. First time in Jackson? He asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror as he pulled away from the airport. Yeah, I said, settling into the seat. Needed a change. He chuckled, low and easy. You picked a good spot for it. Nothing like these mountains to clear your head. I didn't say much after that, just watched out the window as the town slid by, little shops with wooden signs, snow piled up on the curbs, peaks rising higher the further we went. Wes kept talking, pointing out landmarks, telling me about some bar with the best chili in town. I nodded along, half listening, but mostly I was soaking it in, the quiet, the space, the fact that no one here knew me or cared why I'd come. The shuttle wound up a narrow road, trees closing in on both sides, and then there it was, my cabin. It sat alone, tucked against a hill, all dark wood and big windows glowing soft in the fading light. Wes dropped me off with a wave. Enjoy the solitude, man. Holler if you need a ride back. I thanked him and hauled my bag up the steps, the cold biting at my fingertips as I fumbled with the key. The door swung open, and I stopped dead. A fire was already crackling in the stone fireplace, the heat washing over me like a welcome. Flannel blankets were draped over a big leather couch, and those floor-to-ceiling windows showed nothing but snow and trees stretching out forever. Outside, a hot tub steamed under a little overhang, the water bubbling quietly. It was perfect, better than I'd pictured when I booked it in that angry haze back home. I dropped my bag by the door and walked to the windows, pressing my hand against the cold glass. The silence was thick, broken only by the pop of the fire, and it felt like a reset button had been hit. No buzzing phone, no voices telling me what I should feel, just me and this place. I pulled out my phone, snapped a quick selfie with the fire glowing behind me, and posted it. No balloons, no drama, just silence. I didn't check the likes right away, just tossed the phone onto the couch and grabbed a beer from the little fridge the lodge had stocked. The first sip was cold, sharp, and I sank into the couch, letting the warmth from the fire seep into my bones. This was what I'd needed, what I'd been chasing when I'd clicked that confirm button. Not just a trip, But clarity, something to remind me I didn't have to beg for a place in anyone's life. The cabin smelled like pine and smoke, and I closed my eyes for a minute, listening to the wind outside. I could have stayed home, could have fought harder to be at that party, but what would that have gotten me? A seat at the edge of the table, a forced smile while Doreen made her little jabs? No, this was better. I opened my eyes and looked around again, the wooden beams overhead, the thick rug under my feet, the way the firelight danced on the walls. It wasn't just a hideout, it was mine, something I'd chosen when they'd left me no choice at all. I finished the beer, set the bottle down, and stood up to unpack. Not much, just the sweaters and socks I'd thrown in, the gloves I'd bought last minute, but it felt good to settle in, to make the space real. I stepped outside to check the hot tub, the cold slapping me awake again. The steam rose in thick clouds, and I dipped my hand in. Hot, almost too hot, perfect for later. The sky was darkening, stars starting to poke through, and I stood there, hands in my pockets, letting it sink in. Back home, they'd be setting up for Eli's party tomorrow, streamers, cake, all that noise, and I wouldn't be there. Part of me ached at that, a quick, sharp pang when I thought of Eli's face, but I shoved it down. This wasn't about him, it was about them, about how they decided I didn't fit. I went back inside, the warmth wrapping around me again, and grabbed another beer. The phone was lighting up now, likes, comments, probably some messages, but I ignored it. I didn't need validation from anyone back there. What I needed was this, the crackle of the fire, the cold glass in my hand, the quiet that let me hear my own thoughts for once. I sat back down, stretching my legs out, and let my mind wander. Tomorrow, I'd hit the slopes, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. I'd booked a lesson, figured I'd start slow, but the idea of it, the speed, the cold air rushing past, made my pulse kick up a little. It was something new, something for me, not tied to anyone else's plans or rules. I took another sip, the beer settling me, and glanced at the fire. The log shifted, sending up a spray of sparks, and I felt a small, real smile tug at my mouth. This wasn't just escape, it was freedom. They could have their party, their maternal side of it. I had this, and it was already more than they could have given me. The night stretched out ahead, quiet and mine, and I leaned back, ready to let it unfold. I woke up to sunlight streaming through those big cabin windows, the kind of bright that bounces off snow and makes everything look sharper. The fire had burned down to embers overnight, but the room was still warm, cozy in a way I hadn't felt in forever. I stretched, my back popping from the couch where I'd crashed, and for a second, I just lay there, listening to the quiet. No phone buzzing, no voices, just the soft whistle of wind outside. It was Saturday, Eli's birthday, and back home, they'd be blowing up balloons, setting out snacks, getting ready to sing without me. The thought stung, but I shook it off. I'd made my choice, and I was here now, in Jackson Hole, with a day ahead that was all mine. I got up, made coffee in the little kitchen, and stood by the window, mug in hand, watching the mountains glow under the morning sun. This was my therapy, and it was already working. I'd booked a ski lesson for today, something to keep me moving, to keep my head from spinning back to what I was missing. I pulled on my gear, thermal socks, the new gloves, a jacket I hadn't worn in years, and grabbed the ski pass from the counter. The lodge shuttle picked me up right on time, Wes behind the wheel again, grinning like he'd been waiting to see me. Skiing today? Huh? Good call, he said, pulling onto the road. Powder's fresh, best day for it. I nodded, managing a small smile. First time in a while. Hope I don't need it too bad. He laughed, a rough, friendly sound. You'll be fine. They've got good folks up there to show you the ropes. The ride was quick, the hills rolling by, and I felt a flicker of excitement, something I hadn't expected. This was new, and I needed new. At the ski rental shop, I met Lane, my instructor. She was maybe 30, with short hair tucked under a beanie and a grin that said she'd seen her share of shaky first-timers. Callum, right? Ready to hit the snow? She asked, handing me a pair of skis. Yeah, I said, taking them, the weight solid in my hands. Let's see if I remember how this works. She walked me through the basics, how to clip in, how to shift my weight, how to stop without plowing into a tree. Her voice was calm, steady, with a little edge of humor that made it easy to listen. We started on a gentle slope, just a practice run, and I wobbled at first, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. But then I got it, the rhythm, the lean, and I made it down without falling. Lane clapped, grinning. Not bad, Cal. You're a natural. I laughed, breathless, the cold air burning my lungs. Tell that to my knees. The next run was steeper, faster, and I felt it. The rush, the way the wind cut past me, the snow crunching under my skis. My mind went blank, no room for anything but the slope and the next turn. It was exactly what I'd needed, this clean wipe of everything back home. Lane kept me going, pushing me a little harder each time, and by the end, I was grinning like a kid, sweat soaking my shirt under the jacket. You're hooked now, she said, unclipping her skis. Tomorrow, we'll try something bigger. I nodded, still catching my breath. Deal. The mountains stretched out around us, wide and endless, and I felt steady for the first time in days. Back at the cabin, I peeled off my gear and headed straight for the hot tub. The water was scalding, steam rising into the cold air, and I sank in with a groan, a bourbon in hand from the bottle I'd found in the cabinet. The heat melted into my muscles, and I leaned my head back, staring up at the sky turning pink and orange. It was peaceful, perfect, and then my phone buzzed on the ledge where I'd left it. I almost ignored it, but I glanced over messages, piling up again. Trent, my brother-in-law, why are you being so dramatic? Doreen, of course, you abandoned your own son. I stared at them, the bourbon glass cold against my palm, and felt a laugh bubble up, short, hard, empty. They were still at it, still trying to drag me back into their mess. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my camera, snapped a shot of the mountain glowing in the sunset, and posted it, Sometimes, peace is the best gift you can give yourself. Then I tossed the phone aside, letting it clatter on the wood. The water bubbled around me, and I took a slow sip of the bourbon, the burn matching the heat on my skin. Back home, they'd be cutting cake right about now, singing to Eli while he clapped his little hands. I pictured it for a second, his face lit up, Marissa smiling, Doreen fussing over everything, and it hurt, but not as much as I'd thought it would. I wasn't there, and yeah, that sucked. But this was mine. The mountains, the snow, the quiet, they didn't get to take that away. I closed my eyes, letting the steam wrap around me, and thought about the day. Skiing with Lane, feeling my body figure it out, the way the world shrank down to just me and the slope. It was simple, clean, and I hadn't realized how much I'd needed that until now. The sky darkened, stars popping out one by one, and I stayed there, soaking, sipping, letting the cold air mix with the heat. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't look. Whatever they had to say, it could wait forever if I wanted. I wasn't their punching bag anymore, not their fallback guy to blame when things went sideways. I finished the bourbon, set the glass down, and sank lower in the water, the jets rumbling against my back. Tomorrow, I'd ski again, maybe grab a beer at that bar Wes had mentioned. For now, though, this was enough: the hot tub, the mountains, the silence. I'd left their party behind, and out here, I was finding something better. Peace wasn't just a word, it was this, right here, and I wasn't letting it go. I woke up Sunday morning to the smell of coffee brewing in the cabin's little machine, the kind of slow drip that fills the air with something steady and warm. The hot tub had knocked me out last night, and I'd slept hard, no dreams, just a deep, blank rest I hadn't had in weeks. I rolled off the couch, my muscles stiff from skiing but loose from the soak, and grabbed my phone off the counter where I'd left it. The screen was lit up with notifications, but one stood out, a voicemail from Amira, my cousin, the only one in the family who ever got me. Her name made me pause, a little spark of curiosity cutting through the haze. I poured a mug of coffee, the steam curling up, and hit play, leaning against the counter as her voice crackled through. Call me. You are not going to believe what happened. That was it, short, sharp, with a laugh behind it. I grinned despite myself. Amira always had a way of pulling me out of my own head. I took a sip of the coffee, strong and black, and dialed her back. She picked up on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. Cal, oh my God, where do I even start? She said, her voice buzzing with energy. The party yesterday, it was a train wreck. You dodged a bullet, trust me. I set the mug down and walked to the window, the mountains stretching out white and calm under the morning sun. What happened? I asked, keeping it casual, but my pulse kicked up a little. I wasn't sure I wanted to know, but I could not ask. Amira didn't hold back, she never did. Okay, so it starts fine, right? Balloons, cake, Eli's all cute in his little hat. Then Doreen gets up to make this toast, and get this, she says something about men who couldn't make it, all smug like she's scoring points. Marissa rolls her eyes, but you can tell she's pissed. I snorted, picturing it, Doreen with her wine glass, that fake smile she wears like a mask. Sounds about right, I said, and Amira laughed. Oh, it gets better. So Derek shows up, you know, your buddy from work? He's invited, which is already weird since he's not family, and he brings his new girlfriend. Guess who? Marissa's old roommate, Tara, the one she hates. I froze, coffee halfway to my mouth. No way. Yes way, Amira said, glee in her voice. Marissa's face, Cal, I wish you'd seen it. She goes white, then red, and Kylie's over there losing it, yelling at Derek like he planned it. Meanwhile, Doreen's trying to play peacemaker, but she snaps at some random and instead, and Eli, he's overstimulated, screaming his head off. I laughed, a real one this time, sharp and loud in the quiet cabin. Keep going, I said, leaning into the story now. Amira was on a roll. So someone, nobody's owning up, knocks over the cake trying to calm Eli down. It's this big, fancy thing, chocolate and frosting everywhere, and Marissa just screams. Like horror movie screams. People start leaving, grabbing their coats, and the whole thing's over before the sun's even down. It was chaos, Cal, absolute chaos. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting it sink in, the warmth spreading through me as I stared out at the snow. Yes, I picked the right weekend to disappear, I said, and Amira cackled. You have no idea. They're all blaming each other now. Doreen's mad at Marissa, Kylie's mad at Derek, and somehow you're the bad guy for not being there to fix it. I shook my head, setting the mug down on the windowsill. The fire was still smoldering from last night, and I tossed a log on, watching the flames catch. They can't pin this on me, I said, more to myself than her. Oh, they're trying, Amira said. Marissa's been whining to anyone who'll listen, and Doreen's acting like you cursed the whole day by leaving. It's ridiculous. I grinned, poking at the fire with the iron rod. Let them spin it however they want. I'm not there to hear it. Amira's voice softened a little. Good for you, Cal. Seriously. This trip, it's the smartest thing you've done in a while. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yeah, it is. We hung up after that, and I stood there by the fire, the heat licking at my hands. The cabin was quiet again, just the crackle of the logs and the faint hum of the wind outside. I pictured the party falling apart, Doreen's toast, Derek and Tara walking in, the cake hitting the floor, and it felt like a movie I'd walked out of halfway through. I didn't need to see the ending. I already knew it was a mess. And here I was, miles away, with coffee in my hand and mountains out my window. I didn't feel guilty, not like they wanted me to. I felt satisfied, like I'd bet on myself and won. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling through the messages I'd ignored last night. Trent, Doreen, Kylie, all the same noise, trying to drag me back into their drama. I didn't answer. What was there to say? They'd made their party, and it had blown up in their faces. I wasn't the one who'd knocked over the cake or started the yelling. I took my coffee back to the couch and sat down, stretching my legs out. The sun was climbing higher now, turning the snow outside into a sheet of white fire. I thought about Eli for a second, his little hat, his cries, and it tugged at me, but not enough to pull me under. I'd see him soon, away from all that mess, just me and him. The fire popped, sending a spark up the chimney, and I leaned back, letting the warmth settle over me. Amira's call had been a gift, a front row seat to their collapse without having to sit through it. I didn't need to gloat. I just needed this quiet distance, a space where their voices couldn't reach. I finished the coffee, the mug empty now, and set it aside. Outside, the day was waiting, maybe another run on the slopes, maybe just a walk through the snow. Whatever it was, it'd be mine, not theirs. They could keep their imploded party. I had this, and it was better than anything they could have ruined. I sat by the fire that afternoon, the cabin glowing soft with the light bouncing off the snow outside, when my phone started buzzing again. The logs crackled, spitting little sparks, and I almost didn't check it. I was getting good at ignoring the noise. But the screen kept lighting up, one message after another, and I gave in, grabbing it off the couch with a sigh. Marissa's name popped up first. This wouldn't have happened if you'd just come. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the words, and felt a sharp, bitter laugh rise in my throat. Typical, everything goes to hell, and somehow it's my fault for not being there to mop it up. Next was Doreen. You left us to deal with this mess. That one made my jaw clench, the nerve of her acting like I'd abandoned some sacred duty. Then Kylie, you made Eli's first birthday about you. That hit harder, a cheap shot, and for a second, I pictured Eli's face, his little hands clapping, but I shook it off. They were grasping, flailing, trying to pin their disaster on me. I set the phone down hard, to clack loud against the wood of the coffee table, and leaned back, rubbing my face. They excluded me, shut me out of my own son's birthday like I was some stranger, and now they wanted me to feel bad because it fell apart. I laughed again, short, joyless, the sound swallowed by the cabin's quiet. They didn't get it, and they never would. I wasn't the one who turned Eli's day into a circus. That was on them, on Doreen's snide toast and Marissa's grudges and whoever'd smashed the cake. I grabbed my coffee mug from earlier, still half full and cold now, and took a sip anyway, the bitterness matching my mood. The fire popped, and I stared into it, letting the heat sink in while their words rattled around in my head. My phone buzzed again, and I almost chucked it across the room, but it was Amira this time. I opened it quick, expecting more gossip, and she didn't disappoint. Doreen just told Grandma you cursed the party. She said it's bad blood. Grandma's not buying it, though. I grinned, a real one this time, picturing Grandma Ruth, tiny, fierce, with a tongue that could cut glass. If anyone could see through Doreen's nonsense, it was her. I could hear her now, rolling her eyes, telling them all to stop whining. Bad blood, I muttered to myself, shaking my head. More like bad planning and worse attitudes. I didn't text Amira back yet, just set the phone down and stood up, stretching my legs. The cabin felt too still all of a sudden, like I needed to move, to shake off the weight they were still trying to dump on me. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside, the cold hitting me like a slap, crisp and clean. The snow crunched under my boots as I walked toward the trees, no real plan, just needing the air. The mountains loomed ahead, steady and silent, and I stopped, hands in my pockets, breathing deep. Back home, they were probably still spinning their blame game. Marissa crying to her friends, Doreen lecturing anyone who'd listen, Kylie sulking like a kid. And here I was, the scapegoat, the one they decided to pile it all on. It'd be funny if it wasn't so pathetic. I kicked at the snow, sending a little puff into the air, and thought about how predictable they were. Exclude me, then act shocked when I didn't stick around to take their crap. The wind picked up, rustling the pines, and I turned back toward the cabin, my breath fogging in front of me. Inside, the fire was still going strong, and I tossed another log on, watching the flames flare up. My phone was where I'd left it, glowing with their messages, and I made a decision. I was done with it. I opened each one, Marissa's, Doreen's, Kylie's, and Hitblock, one by one. The screen went quiet, and it felt like cutting a rope I'd been tangled in. Amira's number stayed. She was the only one worth keeping. But the rest? Gone. They could yell into the void all they wanted. I wasn't listening anymore. I tossed the phone onto the couch and grabbed the beer from the fridge, the cold glass sharp against my hand. I sank back into the cushions, the fire warming my feet, and took a long sip. Blocking them wasn't just about shutting them out. It was about taking back what they tried to steal. They didn't get to dictate how I felt. Not about Eli. Not about myself. I pictured Grandma Ruth again, probably sitting in her old chair with that look she gets, telling Doreen to quit her dramatics. Bad blood, I said out loud, smirking. If anything, the bad blood was theirs, spilling it all over each other while I was out here, free of it. The beer went down easy, and I let my head tip back, the cabin's quiet wrapping around me like a blanket. Outside, the sky was turning gray, clouds rolling in over the peaks, but it didn't bother me. Let it snow, let it storm. I wasn't going anywhere. This trip wasn't just a break, it was a line in the sand. They'd made me the bad guy, fine. I'd play that part, but on my terms, not theirs. I finished the beer, set the bottle down, and grabbed the flannel blanket off the armrest, pulling it over my legs. The firelight danced on the walls, and I felt something settle in me, anger still, sure, but quieter now, mixed with something stronger. They could spiral all they wanted. I was done spinning with them. Amira's text about Grandma stuck with me, a little lifeline to the family that still made sense, and I held on to it. The rest? They were on their own. I closed my eyes, the warmth sinking in, and let the day fade out, their voices lost in the crackle of the fire. I woke up Monday morning with the cabin still dark, the kind of quiet that only comes with snow muffling the world outside. The fire was just embers now, a faint glow in the hearth, and I lay there on the couch, staring at the ceiling beams. My phone was silent, no buzzing, no notifications, thanks to the blocks I'd put up yesterday. It felt good, like I'd finally turned off a radio that had been blaring static for too long. I didn't know what Marissa or Doreen or Kylie were saying now, and I didn't care. I'd given myself this, Jackson Hole, the mountains, the space, and I wasn't letting them claw it back. I sat up, rubbed the sleep from my eyes, and decided right then, I wasn't ready to go home. 5 more days. That's what I'd give myself. I grabbed my phone, opened the travel app, and extended the trip, cabin, ski pass, shuttle, all of it. Done. The coffee machine gurgled as I set it going, and I stepped outside to feel the air. It was cold, sharp enough to sting my face, and the snow had piled up overnight, a fresh layer blanketing the porch. The mountain stood tall against the pale sky, and I breathed it in, letting it fill me up. Back inside, the coffee was ready, and I poured a mug, the heat seeping into my hands as I leaned against the counter. Today was mine, no plans yet, just possibilities. I'd booked a backcountry ski tour with Lane later, something she'd mentioned during our lesson, and I was already looking forward to it, the quiet of the trails, the burn in my legs. But first, I wanted to soak this in, this feeling of being untethered. The ski tour started mid-morning, and Lane met me at the lodge, her grin as easy as ever. Ready for the real stuff? She asked, tossing me a pair of poles. Let's see if you can keep up. I laughed, clipping into my skis. No promises. We headed out, away from the main slopes, the snow crunching under us as the trees closed in. It was different out here, wilder, quieter, just the sound of our breathing and the swish of skis. Lane led the way, pointing out tracks in the snow, deer, maybe a fox, and I followed, my body settling into the rhythm. The air was cold, my lungs burning, but it felt good, like I was shedding something with every push forward. We stopped at a clearing, the mountains rising sharp around us, and I caught my breath, the world so still it almost hummed. Back at the lodge that evening, I stumbled into a whiskey tasting in the bar, a little setup with wooden tables and a guy pouring samples from bottles I'd never heard of. I joined in, sliding onto a bench next to a couple from Vermont, Mel and Jonas. They were older, maybe 60, with quick laughs and stories about skiing here every winter. What brings you out here solo? Mel asked, her eyes crinkling as she sipped her drink. I took a swallow of the whiskey, smooth, smoky, and shrugged. Missed a birthday party. Best decision I've ever made. Jonas chuckled, raising his glass. To that, then. Family can wait. We clinked, and the warmth spread through me, not just from the drink, but from the ease of it. No judgment, just company. We swapped stories, mine about the slopes, theirs about a moose they'd seen last year, and the night blurred into laughter and refills. Later, back in the cabin, I stoked the fire and grabbed my phone, the whiskey still buzzing in my head. I snapped a shot of the fireplace, the flames licking up, and posted it. I don't fix family messes anymore. That job's been outsourced to karma. I tossed the phone aside and sank into the couch, the blanket pulled over my legs. The silence from my blocked numbers was golden. No texts, no guilt trips, just the crackle of the fire and the faint howl of wind outside. I thought about Mel and Jonas, how simple it had been to sit with them, no history dragging us down. That's what I wanted now, moments that didn't come with strings. The firelight danced on the walls, and I let my mind drift. Back home, they were probably still reeling from the party, Marissa licking her wounds, Doreen spinning her tales. I didn't need to know the details. Amira would fill me in if it was worth it. For now, I had this, the cabin, the snow, the day I'd carved out for myself. I pictured Lane out on the trail, her easy confidence, and the way Mel had patted my arm like I was an old friend. It wasn't just escape anymore. It was something I was building, piece by piece. The whiskey lingered on my tongue, and I closed my eyes, the warmth sinking deep. 5 more days stretched ahead, and I could feel them, open, clean, mine. I got up, grabbed a glass of water to cut through the buzz, and stood by the window. The snow was falling again, soft and steady, burying the world outside. I didn't feel trapped, though. I felt free. No contact, no apologies, just me and this place. I thought about that post, the one about karma, and smirked. Let them figure it out. I wasn't their cleanup crew anymore. I finished the water, set the glass down, and headed back to the couch, the fire still going strong. Tomorrow, I'd ski again, maybe hit that bar Wes had mentioned. For now, I pulled the blanket tighter and let the quiet take over. This was what I'd come for, clear skies, clear head, no one else's mess to carry. The night settled around me, and I leaned into it, ready for whatever came next, as long as it was mine. I woke up Tuesday to the sound of snow tapping the cabin windows, a soft, steady rhythm that pulled me out of sleep. The fire was out, just a pile of ash now, and the room was cool, but I didn't mind. I lay there for a minute, staring at the wooden ceiling, feeling the quiet wrap around me like a second blanket. My phone was still on the couch where I'd tossed it last night, and I didn't reach for it, not yet. The whiskey tasting with Mel and Jonas lingered in my head, their easy laughter, the way they'd toasted my escape without prying. It had been a good night, simple and light, and I wanted to hold on to that. I got up, stretched my stiff legs, and started the coffee, the familiar gurgle filling the silence as I looked out at the snow piling up. It was a new day, and I wasn't letting anyone back home pull me out of it. The coffee was hot, burning my tongue a little as I took the first sip, and I decided to call Amira while it cooled. She picked up quick, her voice bright despite the early hour. Cal, you still alive out there? I grinned, leaning against the counter. Barely. Too much whiskey last night. She laughed, loud and sharp. Good. You deserve it. Things here, though, they're a mess. I took another sip, bracing myself. What now? She didn't hesitate. Marissa's been crying to everyone, her friends, Trent, even the mailman probably. Says the party was a disaster because you weren't there to keep things steady. Doreen's blaming Marissa for not controlling Derek and Tara. Kylie blocked half the family after some big fight with Trent, and he started this group chat to fix everything. It's a circus. I shook my head, smirking into my mug. Sounds like they're doing fine without me. Oh, it gets better, Amira said, her tone gleeful. Grandma Ruth told them all to grow up, called Doreen a meddling hen to her face. She's the only one keeping it real. I laughed, picturing Grandma's glare, that no-nonsense way she cuts through the noise. Wish I'd seen that, I said, and Demira snorted. You should have. Anyway, Marissa sent you an email, figured you blocked her texts. Said she needs to talk when you're back. I froze, the mug halfway to my mouth. An email. Of course she'd find a way around. She can wait, I said, keeping my voice flat. I'm not rushing back to play therapist. Amira's voice softened. Good. Stay out there, Cal. They'll figure it out, or they won't. Not your problem. We hung up, and I set the phone down, staring at it for a second. An email. I didn't open it, didn't even look for it. Whatever Marissa wanted, it could sit there, unread, until I was ready. If I ever was. I finished my coffee and grabbed my ski gear, the routine settling me. The snow was still falling outside, light and steady, and I headed for the slopes, the shuttle picking me up with Wes at the wheel again. Back at it? He asked, grinning. Can't stop now, I said, and he nodded like he got it. Lane was waiting at the lodge, and we hit a steeper run this time, my legs burning as I carved through the powder. I went faster, freer, the wind whipping past, and it felt like I was leaving more than just tracks in the snow. After the run, I stopped at the lodge gift shop, my breath still fogging in the cold. I wandered the aisles, not looking for much, until I saw it, a small sketchbook, leather-bound, with a pencil tucked in the spine. It caught my eye, and I grabbed it, an idea sparking. Back at the cabin, I stoked the fire and sat down, the book open on my lap. I wasn't an artist, not really, but I started sketching anyway, a rough outline of the mountains I'd seen today, jagged peaks under a wide sky. Then, below it, I added the date I'd left, the day I'd boarded that plane. My liberation day. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and I liked how it looked, simple, solid, a mark of something I'd claimed. I thought about turning it into a tattoo, something permanent to carry with me. The idea stuck, growing as I flipped the pencil between my fingers. I'd always wanted ink, something small but real, and this felt right, a mountain range, that date, a reminder of when I'd stopped letting them define me. I sketched it again, cleaner this time, and leaned back, the fire warming my legs. Amira's words echoed, Marissa crying, Doreen pointing fingers, Kylie sulking, and I let them drift away, smoke up the chimney. They were spiraling, just like she'd said, and I wasn't jumping in to stop it. Not anymore. The snow kept falling outside, burying the porch, and I got up to grab a beer, the cold bottle a contrast to the heat in the room. I didn't check my email, didn't even glance at my phone. Marissa's "we need to talk" could wait forever if I wanted. I sat back down, the sketchbook still open, and took a sip, the firelight flickering over the page. I pictured her typing that message, maybe pacing her kitchen, thinking I'd come running. She was wrong. I was here, sketching mountains, skiing slopes, letting their mess spin out without me. The beer went down easy, and I added a few more lines to the drawing, sharp edges, a little shadow. It was rough, but it was enough. I leaned back, the blanket pulled over my knees, and watched the flames. Tomorrow, I'd ski again, maybe ask Lane about that bar Wes kept mentioning. For now, this was it, the cabin, the snow, the sketch in my hands. They could spiral all they wanted. I was done circling with them. The fire popped, and I smiled, small but real. This trip wasn't just a break, it was a beginning, and I was holding on to it, one line at a time. The night stretched out, quiet and mine, and I let it settle, the weight of their chaos left far behind. I woke up Monday morning, the last day of my extended trip, to a sky so blue it looked like it had been painted on. The snow had stopped overnight, leaving everything outside the cabin crisp and bright, the kind of morning that makes you want to stand still and take it in. I rolled off the couch, my back creaking from too many nights there, and started the coffee, the familiar smell filling the air as I shuffled to the window. The mountains glowed under the sunrise, soft pinks and oranges spilling over the trees, and I stood there, mug in hand, watching it unfold. This was it, my last day in Jackson Hole, and I didn't feel that pull to go back, not yet. I'd found something here, something I wasn't ready to let go of, and I wanted to hold it tight before the real world came crashing in. I took my coffee outside, stepping onto the porch in my boots and coat, the cold biting at my face as I leaned against the railing. The air was sharp, clean, and I sipped slow, letting the warmth fight the chill. Back home, Marissa's email was probably still sitting there, unread, and the thought of it didn't twist me up like it might have a week ago. Doreen's blame, Kylie's whining, all their noise, it was distant now, like a radio station I'd tuned out. I pictured Eli for a second, his little grin, and that ached, but it wasn't enough to drag me under. I'd see him soon, on my terms, not theirs. For now, this sunrise, this quiet, it was mine, and I wasn't trading it for anything. I went back inside, the fire still dead from last night, and decided to skip it, no point building one just to leave it burning. Instead, I grabbed my phone and snapped a picture of the sunrise through the window, the light catching on the snow like sparks. I posted it, my fingers moving fast. Turns out I didn't miss much. I gained everything. I didn't check the likes, didn't wait for replies, just tossed the phone onto the couch and finished my coffee standing up. The words felt true, solid, and I didn't need anyone's approval to back them up. I'd come here raw, cut open by that text from Marissa, and now I was leaving with something better, peace, clarity, a line I'd drawn for myself. I packed slow, folding my sweaters, stuffing the socks into the duffel, the sketchbook tucked in last. That mountain drawing, the date below it, it was rough, but it meant something, and I wasn't letting it get lost in the shuffle. The cabin felt smaller now, like it was ready to let me go, and I took one last look around, the big windows, the leather couch, the hearth where I'd burned through their drama night after night. It had been good to me, this place, and I zipped the bag shut with a nod, like I was thinking it. The shuttle was coming soon, Wes behind the wheel one last time, and I'd be on a plane by afternoon. But I wasn't done with the day yet. I wanted one more piece of it. I headed to the slopes, the snow crunching under my boots, and rented skis for a quick run. Lane wasn't around, but I didn't need her. I'd figured it out enough to go solo. The lift carried me up, the cold wind whipping past, and I looked out over the valley, the trees dusted white, the peaks standing tall. At the top, I pushed off, fast and free, my legs steady now, the rhythm second nature. The snow flew around me, the world blurring into white and blue, and I laughed, loud, real, the sound swallowed by the mountain. It was over too quick, but it was enough, a last taste of what I'd found here. I unclipped at the bottom, my breath fogging, and handed the skis back, my chest light. Back at the cabin, I grabbed my bag and waited for Wes, the sun climbing higher now. He pulled up right on time, grinning through the window. "Leaving already?" he asked as I climbed in. "Yeah," I said, tossing the duffel in the back. "Gotta get back eventually." He nodded, pulling onto the road. "You look different, man. Lighter." I shrugged, managing a small smile. "Feels that way." He didn't push, just drove, the hills sliding by as we headed for the airport. I watched them go, the snow, the pines, and felt a pang, not regret, but something close to gratitude. This place had given me more than I'd expected, and I wasn't forgetting it. At the airport, I checked in, the ticket in my hand to quiet into it all. The flight was smooth, the mountain shrinking below me, and I leaned back, the sketchbook in my lap. I didn't open it, just held it, the weight a reminder. Back home, I'd land in the mess, Marissa's email, whatever fallout was waiting, but I wasn't the same guy who'd left. I'd set a boundary here, one they couldn't cross, and I'd stick to it. No more showing up where I wasn't wanted, no more swallowing their shame. The plane hummed, and I closed my eyes, the sunrise still burned into my head. When I got home, the house was dark, quiet, just like I'd left it. I dropped the bag by the door and stood there, the Lego tower still on the coffee table. It hit me, Eli, the birthday I'd missed, but I didn't let it pull me down. I'd see him soon, just us, no circus. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, cracked it open, and stepped outside, the night cool and still. The stars were out, not as bright as Wyoming's, but enough. I raised the bottle to the sky, a small salute to the horizon I'd left behind, and whispered, "Here's to peace." The first sip was cold, sharp, and I grinned, zero regret, all gain. Whatever came next, I'd handle it my way, and they'd have to figure out how to live with that.